Okay, perfect. Then I'm happy to be here and to see so many people interested with adolescents and young adults. Then you heard about the epidemiology. You heard about the fact that in some countries for some years there were less gain in survival, and at the same time there were less inclusion in trial for AYA. And that might have participated for some point to this observation that were parallel. You heard just before that in the patients, by being included in trials, have benefit of the dose intensity of the pediatric chemotherapy trial. That's the typical example of the leukemia trial, where when the adults adopted a more pediatric approach, there have been an increase not just in pediatric survival, but also in adult survival, including adolescents and young adults. Being included in trial can be also important to have a quick access to innovative therapy, and usually adult patients have a quicker access to this innovative therapy. Then participating in trial can possibly improve survival. Then it's very important to try to understand what are the problems for adolescents and young adults being part of this trial, and to try to improve the inclusion of these patients in trials. You have seen that the epidemiology doesn't stop at 18 or start at 18. You have a range of cancer, pediatric cancer and adult cancer and typical AYA cancer that can be seen in that population. But if you look to the therapeutic trials, there are very few trials up to 18, and then suddenly at 18, something happened and you have a huge amount of trial. And the picture that you can see here is just for disease that are seen in adolescents and young adults. And we have excluded all these things that we cannot see in adolescents and young adults. One of the explanations is that there is a separation between the adult drug development and the pediatric drug development. You know that there is a pediatric investigation plans that are set up in Europe, but usually these pediatric investigation plans occurs very late in the adult drug development. And here there is an American study from the FDA, where they show that between the start of the first in-human trial in adults and the first in-human trial in pediatric patients, the median time is 6 years. And the range is quite huge because there are some trials that have opened like around 25 years after the trial in adults. Means that there is a gap between the time where you learn things in adults and the moment you learn things in adolescents. But we know when you are able to do joint trial, you are able to increase the inclusion of adolescents and young adult patients to a range, at least for the adolescents, that is close from the children ones. Less for the young adults, but this is something that works very well especially in bone sarcoma, as you can see here. But if you look, it works in phase 3, but if you look to phase 2, we still have a 18-year barrier that is completely not understandable if you look to the epidemiology of this disease, which is typically adolescent and young adult disease. Then there is some effort to do for early trials. This was a study about all the trials from phase 1 and phase 2 for diseases that were typical disease of that you can observe in AYA population. And as you can see, the transitional trials, those that were open to adolescents and young adults, were mainly seen in sarcoma and less in other disease. And basically, it were most seen where pediatric oncologists and medical oncologists were collaborating. but it's very, very different across disease. And if you look to the kind of the increase of this trial over years, the pediatric trial and the translational trial are those that are less increasing compared to the adult trials. There is also an influence on the sponsorship. If you have a study that is opened by academic up to recently, you have less chance to have it open to have an adult trial open also to the youngest one. It was more frequent in the academic sponsored trial. However, it represents only 1/3 of the trials. The current landscape with the separation between adult and pediatric drug development have bring some situations that were completely crazy, especially the delay of offering adolescents a drug that we know that was already active in adult disease, where the disease were a common disease between adolescents and young adults and adults in general. For example, this example of the development of brentuximab in Hodgkin lymphoma, a huge effect of brentuximab in Hodgkin lymphoma, known and published in November 2011, but only for adult patients above 18. And the pediatric trials start only 1 year later and finish like more than 7 years later. Means that at the time we finished the pediatric trial, the adults were already using brentuximab in combination with chemotherapy. Then that's a crazy situation. Another crazy situation is because of this PIP, when the EMA have seen that a drug was active in a disease, in an adult disease, they require to have adolescents trial because the disease was also present in adolescents. That was the case, for example, for the development of BRAF inhibitor in melanoma. But basically, melanoma in adolescents are very rare disease. They are usually with a better outcome than in older adults. Means that at the same time, five industry company were developing trials with BRAF inhibitor in adolescents melanoma all over the world. All these trials have closed before recruiting all the patients because it was just infeasible to recruit these patients. While if these adolescents have been included in adult trials, they will have access very early to the drug. But this is not just a problem for the pediatric population, for the adolescents. It's also a problem for the young adult population. If you look to the development, for example, of ALK inhibitor have been developed in lung cancer, which is a cancer that is not that doesn't exist in children. Then the company has obtained what we call a class waiver. Then they were allowed by EMA to not develop the drug in the pediatric population because the disease was not existing in the pediatric population. But ALK inhibitor, you all know that it's interesting in acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is typically a pediatric and mainly an adolescent and young adult disease, which means that when the drug was usable in adults for lung cancer, young adults above 18 with ILCL will not be able to have access to the drug, which is also a bit crazy in terms of drug development. Then all these three problems, the class waiver problem, the delay of drug access and infeasibility of adolescent trials is a huge problem. And as all medical doctors want to treat the patient, it has led to an off-label use in adolescents and young adults of a lot of drugs already approved in adult indication. But this off-label use is good for, it's a problem also for the knowledge of the drug efficacy in the IA population, the safety of this drug in this IA population, and also for the tumor biology, because no sample are collected. And also for the drug development, because we don't know always if the drug will work exactly the same across the age. And the perfect example is the development of HER2 inhibitors where the development was very close between adults and pediatric. And what they have been very successful to do is to do biology across all age and to be able to see what were the biological factors that were sensitizing or leading to resistance to the drug. And they observed that those that have P53 mutation were more resistant to the drug than others, and this population was typically the adolescent population. Then, without doing development very close with pediatric, adolescent, and young adult and adult population, we will not have seen that kind of things. Then what do we need to change? We need to change mind. We need to work together. It's pediatric and medical oncologists together, but also academics and industry together to increase awareness and to be pragmatic. To be pragmatic, this is what we try to do with the Accelerate FAIR group. Accelerate is a multi-stakeholder platform to try to improve innovative therapy in children and adolescents, and where you have academics, you have pharma industry, you have regulators, and you have parents and patients. In 2017, we created the FAIR group for fostering age-inclusive research with all the stakeholders and adolescents and young adults participating and the parents, with the objective to try to identify successful trials, to try to raise awareness and to bring tools to facilitate the understanding and the pragmatic realization of a trial, of an adult trial including adolescent, or a pediatric trial including young adults. The pragmatic solution is to get rid about developing trials across pathology, but rather think about mechanism of action of the drug and the biology of the tumor, and also to abolish the 18-year dogma in early drug trial and to try to have trans-age trials, or at least adult trials also open to adolescents. And when you talk about adolescents, we talk about patients around 12 years old, because if you compare phase 1 in adults and adolescents up to 12 years old, they have similar PK, they have similar recommended dose as long as you give the drug according to BSA or weight. Usually they have less acute toxicity than adults. When you say that, some people tell you, but there is a legal issue. You cannot do early phase trials in adults with children or adolescents including in it. This is not true. There is no legal issue, and there is even now recommendation from the FDA and EMA to do so. Then they will tell you there is an opposition of the industry. This is not completely true. You have to work with them and you have to help them on some points. And what we are sure is that we have a huge parents and patients support to open such a trial, to get early access to the drug. That's something very important to them, but they consider being in the trial is probably safer than being treated outside the trial. Then that's rational, rapid and safe solution, but that doesn't mean that there is no barrier, and doesn't mean that we need to do it at all costs. Of course, opening a trial, an adult trial to adolescents, should be scientifically and medically justified. It can be done from first in human, but you will not put the first patient as an adolescent in the first in human trial. It should be done with the respect of the regulation for children in research, and it should be done under cover of the PK, especially if there is no previous pediatric data. And of course, and this is a request from the IA themselves, it should be done in an appropriate pediatric or IA care rather than an adult care. We have tried to see what were the problem to do such a trial, because this is not so important. And we did a survey that we sent to several associations, ITCC, Accelerate, CIOP, ESMO, and different disease organ specific group of disease that are present in AYA. We got 124 answers, and you see that basically most of the answer came from the pediatric oncology world, but some industry answers too, around 25%. It was the answers from across the world, but very few answers from medical oncology, none from ESMO, but some from the disease-specific group. More or less, we asked them, have you run adult trial including adolescents? And around half of them say yes. And if you look to the age, the lower age limit was usually 16 years old. At the other hand, we asked them, did you open trials with pediatric trials that were open to young adults? And half of them respond yes, and the upper age range was very different between 21, 25, and 30 years old. And to the question, did you really recruit adolescents and young adults in these trials? The answer more or less for that 2/3 of them recruit them, which is more than what we were expected. We also asked them what were the hurdles to running joint trial of adults and adolescents, and what are the real ones that you have faced, and those that you think can exist and those that are real. And basically the answer was not so different between what the people think and what they really faced, except for the reluctance of medical oncologists. And what was very interesting, if you dissociate the answer between the pharma and the academic, most of the academic will tell you that the problem is the refusal of the pharma company and at a national or at a global level. But if you ask the same question to the pharma, they will tell you that there is no problem. We then asked them the reason why adolescents were not included in joint adult and adolescent trials. And what is the most important is the epidemiology, of course, but also the lack of knowledge of the network to try to bring the young adolescents in. Means that the collaboration between pediatric and medical oncologists should be improved. We asked the question the other way around. Have you opened trial? What were the hurdles to open pediatric trial to young adults above 18 years? Most of the people thought that it was not feasible when you were developing a drug in a pediatric investigation plan, which is not true. And again, the reluctance of medical oncology comes up, highlighting the importance of the collaboration with pediatric and medical oncologists. And again, the non-appropriate network, everything going in the same way. We also asked them what they know about what exists, and especially the FDA guidance for inclusion to adolescents in an adult trial that was published by the FDA in 2018, I think. And interestingly, most of the people didn't know that it was existing. And we asked them do you know about the letter of support of the EMA? And most of them didn't know it. Then we set up a website where we have put all these things online that are freely accessible, can be downloaded with all the multi-stakeholder support. You have the countries that are for each country, who are the referee to try to improve that in the country. You have in terms of support of academics, either pediatric and medical oncologists. You have the support of the health authorities with the FDA guidance, the EMA letter, and the EFGCP letter. And importantly, you have also an industry support with a letter that has been signed by all the professional organizations of the pharma industry that are developing drugs in oncology and beyond the oncology. And this letter can be downloaded and used to help to open such a trial. You have also videos and comments from patients and parents to explain why they want to participate to such a trial. We produce also pragmatic tools, a toolkit for the investigator, where all the section that you have to put in a protocol to be sure that you are doing a protocol that is safe for adolescents being included in adult trials, and a toolkit for patients and parents to, especially for the patients and parents that participate to ethics committees or participate to the review of protocols, to explain them why this is something that is safe. There was a work also about the EFGCP, the European Forum of Good Clinical Practice, to help the decision to include adolescents in adult trial with a decision tree. You can also download everything. I will not go in the details, but that's very helpful to decide if this is a trial that should include adolescents or not. We have also developed a fair stamp to reward the trials that were doing good, in a way, that were including adolescents in adult trial or young adults in pediatric trials, to try to promote more trial in that way. Of course, this is just what we are doing at European level, but each country has its own way of doing things, because we are not equal in terms of access to clinical trial and in terms of access of care. Then there is different way. Some are going from the top to down, means that the National Health Authority are giving guidelines to the people that are really making the trials happen, and there are countries where it's the contrary. It's the disease group that are motivating the national authority to try to change things. Then is everything solved? Probably not. We still have refusal of patients to be included in that trial. There is sometimes overlapping trials that can make some confusion, especially for the doctors and for the patients. We still need to improve the recruitment of patients, and we might have some difficulties to capture the toxicity outside the trial, because we still have drugs that are given outside the trial. Another thing that is very important is if we want to develop new drugs in adolescents and young adults, we need also to improve the biology, the knowledge on the biology of adolescents and young adults cancer. And there is huge effort coming from every world, from the pediatric world, from the adult world, and also specific IA programs to try to get more insight on the biology of the tumor with molecular profiling programs. And this is leading also to new trials. For example, if you look to the Biomed trial, it was typically a pediatric trial with for the IPG. And then by the biology that they have done, they have realized that some of the adult glioma of the midline that were more seen in young adults were also having the same mutation. And now the following trial is not just limiting to the pediatric population, but is also including this adolescent population. But of course, if you have a perfect trial design and everything is fine, there is some other things that patients need to know to access this trial. To be aware that they exist, the trial should be available in the institution is treated. They should be able to access it, and it should be acceptable. And there is a huge effort to try to favor the access of patients to this trial and to the enrollment of these trials. And this is where the IA structure are very important because of the support that they are bringing to these patients. Not just to explain, but also to help them along the journey of the treatment. But it needs to be not just local initiative, it needs to be something that is embraced by everybody. And this is why there have been this part of clinical trial has been also stressed in the position paper of ESMO SciUp educational group. And in conclusion, we have done some progress. We need more progress, and what we need is to have really a collaboration between pediatric and medical oncologists. And then if there is some medical oncologists that are interested in new drugs development, please feel free to come and participate to the Accelerate group. We are looking more medical oncologists. Thank you very much.